A successful lawyer encounters a homeless man holding a watch that belonged to her boyfriend, who died 20 years ago. Intrigued and desperate for answers, she discovers that the watch is the key to a long-buried mystery. Her search leads her to a charity centre, where a surprising secret challenges everything she believed to be true. Could lost love be rediscovered? Embark on a journey of revelations, emotions, and a past that refuses to be forgotten. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Carol, a successful lawyer, was leaving the courthouse after a victory, but unlike other days, she did not feel the usual triumph. Her thoughts were immersed in memories of Richard, her boyfriend who had died in an accident 20 years ago, near that same city. She could not shake the feeling of emptiness that accompanied her. As she descended the courthouse steps, something caught her attention. Sitting on a bench in the square, a homeless man dressed in rags was holding a watch. Her eyes locked onto that object, and she felt her heart race. That watch! It couldn't be. It was the same one she had given to Richard, with his initials engraved on the back. A wave of emotions washed over her, and her body began to tremble slightly. This watch. The words came out hesitantly, almost getting lost in the wind. The weight of the memories that this object brought was overwhelming, but she needed to know, she needed to hear the truth from the man. "Where did you get it?" The beggar raised his eyes, surprised by Carol's approach. "A man gave it to me, along with some clothes," he replied in a hoarse and distant voice. Carol felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Who was this man? Can you remember?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure, though her voice betrayed her growing anxiety. The beggar looked at the watch and then at Carol, as if trying to pull the memory from a hazy dream. I don't know," he said, shaking his head. He was tall and grey-haired, but the face, I can't remember. Frustration and hope mixed in Carol's chest, creating a whirlwind of emotions. She needed more, some clue that would lead her to the truth. "Please, try to remember some more details. It is very important to me." The beggar closed his eyes, concentrating. "He was at the charity centre here in the city," he finally answered, pointing in the direction. "It's at the end of this avenue, to the left." Those words echoed in Carol's mind like thunder. She felt a mix of hope and fear as an impossible question took over her thoughts. Could Richard be alive? Even after 20 years, he remained alive in her memory, and the pain never abandoned her. She had gone through many transformations in her life, but she never moved on, never could love someone else. Deep down, she seemed to have hope of finding him. His body was never found. The accident that took him happened when the car plunged into a deep lake, which now seemed to suffocate her with memories. She wondered restlessly, could he have survived and simply disappeared? Her mind wandered, creating countless scenarios, fueling hopes and doubts that never left her in peace. The woman distanced herself from the beggar with unsteady steps. Her heart pounded in her chest, and the air seemed heavy, as if each breath required a monumental effort. Richard had always been her anchor, the point of balance in a chaotic world. She remembered the first time she saw him, how his eyes sparkled with a mix of kindness and determination. He was the type of man who walked into a room and made everyone feel his presence without needing to say a word. The silence of the street contrasted with the chaos of her thoughts. Inside, Carol felt a tangle of emotions. Part of her wanted to believe that all of this was nothing more than a cruel coincidence, a trick played by fate. Determined, she headed to the charity centre, where she hoped to find answers. The place, simple and modest, exuded an atmosphere of resignation and kindness. Carol looked around and saw women silently arranging boxes, organising the little they had to offer to those who possessed nothing. It was almost closing time, but she couldn't wait. "Excuse me, do you know a man named Richard?" The words came out more hesitant than she intended, as if the sound of that name in her own voice brought to the surface a pain she thought she had buried. The women stopped what they were doing and looked at her with a mix of curiosity and compassion. "Richard?" one of them repeated, frowning. "No, we don't know anyone by that name here." Disappointment squeezed Carol's chest as if all the air had been sucked out, but she couldn't give up. With trembling hands, she took from her pocket a photo yellowed by time, an image she carried like a talisman. "And this man? Have you seen him?" The older woman of the pair approached, pulling her glasses to see better. There was a silence that lasted seconds but felt like an eternity to Carol. Then, with a slight tilt of her head, the woman said, "He looks a lot like Joshua, one of the volunteers here." Carol's world stopped, as if time had lost its meaning. Joshua. Not Richard, but someone who could be him, someone who might have known him. A spark of hope that at the same time burned and renewed her strength. "He will be here tomorrow," the woman continued, her voice gentle but firm, as if wanting to assure Carol that there was still more to be discovered. "Come back, and you will be able to speak with him." Carol nodded, speechless, feeling her heart race, her mind running ahead of what her body could bear. The possibility of meeting Richard again, or finally understanding what really happened to him, began to take shape, fragile and undefined. But there, before her. She left the charity centre with the promise of returning, each step echoing like a beat marking the start of a new journey, one that might lead her to confront the ghost she had always avoided. She spent the night awake, her face buried in her hands, trying to imagine what it would be like to see Richard again. What if he didn't recognise her? Or what if, on the contrary, he saw her and everything came back? The pain, the love, the stolen future. Her life had changed so much, the past was buried under layers of new beginnings. Accepting Richard back would mean unearthing all of that, reliving the loss, facing the fact that he had never really been dead. But the greatest fear, the one that made her wake up with a start, was the fear of losing him again. How could she bear to be just a coincidence? Carol didn't know how she had managed to reach the charity centre. Her steps seemed to be driven by a force she didn't understand, a mix of fear and hope pushing her forward. The woman felt the air vanish when she saw him from behind, occupied with something trivial, as if the passage of time had no weight on him. But for her, those 20 years compressed into a second, collapsing all the certainties she had built about mourning, about absence, about death. Her hands trembled, and she had to gather all the strength she had to avoid falling right there on that floor that suddenly seemed so distant. The world spun around her, but the focus of everything was on a single point. Him. It was Richard. The same man she had loved, cried for, and buried within herself. But now he was there, in front of her, as if life had played the cruelest trick on her. He was alive, breathing, and everything in her wanted to run to him, hug him, smell his scent, hear his voice saying it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. But something was wrong. When he turned around, the smile she expected didn't come. Instead, the eyes that once knew her so well looked at her as if she were a stranger, a ghost from the past. Carol could barely keep her breathing under control while she waited for him to finish arranging the boxes. Every second seemed like an eternity, and the mixture of hope and fear in her chest was almost unbearable. When he finally turned and their eyes met, she felt a wave of emotion so powerful that she had to fight not to break down right there. Can you talk to me for a moment?" Her voice came out almost in a whisper, fearing that any louder words might shatter the fragile reality in front of her. He nodded, unaware of the storm that was unfolding inside her. They sat in a corner, and Carol, trying to be as gentle as possible, began to ask questions she never imagined she would need to ask. He answered calmly, not realizing how much each of his words weighed on her heart. Richard, now called Joshua, recounted his story with the simplicity that made Carol feel a lump in her throat. He began, "Miss, I don't remember anything before arriving in this city." He shared that 20 years ago he was found by fishermen and taken to the hospital. At the time, they tried to discover his identity, and he waited for someone who might come looking for him, but those people never appeared. Later, he restarted his life in a new city, where a charity centre took him in and offered support. With the assistance he received, he managed to study and eventually became a businessman, coincidentally resuming the profession he had before, despite not recalling the details of his previous life. His words were like sharp blades, slowly cutting away what was left of Carol's old life. As he spoke, the pain in her chest only grew. He had moved to that city, adopted the name Joshua, and tried, as best as he could, to rebuild a life that was no longer his. Carol looked at him, fighting against the tears that insisted on welling up. He was there, so close and yet so distant. He was no longer the Richard she knew, the man with whom she had shared dreams and plans. He was Joshua, someone who had to recreate his own existence from scratch. Carol observed Joshua, or rather Richard, while he spoke, each word a silent blow to her soul. She struggled to maintain her composure, even with the whirlwind of emotions threatening to overflow at any moment. When he finished telling his story, the silence between them became nearly unbearable. Carol knew she needed to tell the truth, that she couldn't let this moment slip away. "Joshua, I am Carol." Her voice trembled, a mixture of hope and fear. She felt a deep pain as she pronounced the words she had held back for so long. "You were everything to me. When you disappeared, it was as if a part of me had been torn away." Carol hesitated, searching his eyes for any sign of recognition. "Your real name is Richard. I loved you, and I never stopped looking for you." Joshua looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise. He didn't know what to say. Part of him desperately wanted to remember, to cling to any fragment of memory that would confirm what she was saying. But there was only a painful void. He touched her face with a trembling hand, as if the touch could bring back what was lost. "Carol." The name slipped from his lips as if it were a forgotten prayer. He couldn't remember, yet at the same time, he felt that something inside him responded to that name. An intense emotion took hold of him, and even without recognizing the past she offered him, he felt tears fill his eyes. I wish so much I could remember," Joshua murmured, his voice faltering as he struggled to find the right words. "But everything is so hazy. I want to promise you that things will go back to the way they were, but I don't know." The sigh that escaped his lips carried all the weight of his uncertainty. Carol held his hand firmly, as if by doing so she could anchor him to the life they once shared. "It doesn't matter if you don't remember, Richard. What matters is that you are here, that we are here." The emotion on his face was palpable. He didn't know how to react, but the love Carol felt for him, the truth of her words, touched something deep within his soul. Even without memory, he could feel the connection, the invisible bond that united them. "I don't remember, but I feel that you are important," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I feel that there is something very strong between us." Carol nodded, her own tears now flowing freely. "It's love, Richard. The love that never died." And there, in that unexpected and painful encounter, the two embraced, trying to find comfort in the only thing that remained, the certainty that, even without memories, the feeling that once united them still lived, still breathed, even amidst the darkness of forgetfulness. The memories didn't return completely, but the presence of people who loved him, who shared his past, began to bring up fragments, moments he thought were lost forever. Carol, in turn, went through an even deeper transformation. By accepting Richard back, she realized it was not just a matter of reminiscing about what once was, but of rediscovering who they were now. Their journey was not a return to the past, but the construction of a new present, where love and pain coexisted side by side in a delicate balance. She understood that loving someone goes beyond simply taking them back. It also means embracing the inevitable changes that time brings. The scars that love carries are memories of battles fought and survived, but they also mark the beginning of a new path. By choosing to be with Richard again, Carol not only embraced the man he had become, but also the woman she had become herself. Stronger, more resilient, yet still capable of loving with all the intensity that time could not erase. She decided to move to the city where he now lived, and they were happy. Not like a fairy tale being pieced back together, but like a story of rebirth, of new beginnings forged from the ashes of a past that in some way refused to be forgotten. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.